Okay, I have a show favorite with me today, Todd Bubba Horwitz. We are going to be talking about the U.S. economy, the stock market faking people out, the Federal Reserve manipulating the American public, and the media manipulating the American public. Todd, welcome to today's show.
Stephen, always great to be with you. It's one of my favorite places to be, and certainly we'll have a lot of fun today.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the time. So, lots going on. Not sure if we're in a big head fake right now, but 2022 was a rough year for Americans' 401ks and IRAs with an average loss of over 20%. Since then, the S&P 500, because of only a handful of companies, has come back up 14%. Where do you see the market going over the rest of 2023? And as we enter into a presidential election year, what might we see in 2024?
Well, I mean, obviously the trend is higher, whether I like it or believe it or not. I mean, I am participating in these markets. I am long from a investing and a trading standpoint. I mean, I don't like them. I don't think they're very good. I think we're setting up for a massive fall. Does it fall this year? Again, the one problem with me trying to say when is virtually impossible. I would think that it could be a rough fourth quarter when we get there. We're in the summer, so we're in the dog days of quiet markets to begin with. And it looks to me, Stephen, that the big banks are kind of sitting this out right now as they allow the retail investor to buy. If I had told you 5 years ago that I could give you 5.25 or 5.5% on a CD for 3 month or 6 month CD, you'd have jumped at it and been thankful. Now people ignore it. They don't care. So what that looks like to me is that the greed factor is playing in this market. How long will it play for? That I don't know. But I do believe that this is a greed-driven market. And of course, we always know how greed ends when the markets decide that when they can no longer support the markets going up.
Yeah, nobody loves greed more than Wall Street. I mean, they literally have made two movies called Greed about the greediness of Wall Street. So Wall Street definitely has its hooks in the American economy, and so this may be exactly what you're saying. But isn't it true that even with the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones coming back up, it's really only a handful of companies that are weighting that average and pulling that up? For example, Nvidia is going crazy. Facebook is having a bounce back. Apple is having a bounce back. It's FANG, but with a new N, right?
You're so far on point that they're rebalancing the NASDAQ. Okay. They're going to rebalance and take a lot of these stocks that have driven, because it is a handful of stocks that have driven the entire market structure, which is not the way it should be. And it really shows you the true weakness of the American economy. But they're going to rebalance the NASDAQ because, listen, the NASDAQ's up almost 40%. And that is not, those are not good numbers when you think about it. Yeah, it feels great when you're getting paid and it's going into your account. But really all that leads to is if you go back to the 90s and the big bubble of the 90s.
Yeah. Well, and this is why I like having you on, not to point out your age, but you have over 40 years of trading, which means you've been in the trenches for 40 years, seeing what a real up looks like and what a scary down looks like, and how to maneuver through both of those. I would bet in the comments down below, if I asked, are we in a recession right now? The majority of my viewers would say, it sure feels like a recession. Yet the CEO for the Bank of America just came out today and said that he's been wrong, and that he doesn't believe we're going to enter into a recession. He's dialing back his prediction. Is there a difference between a bank CEO that's making hundreds of millions of dollars and the average American that's just getting by, and their lens of how expensive it's become to live in America?
Well, I think that they live in fantasy land. And of course, they have the money and they don't really care and there's no reason for them to justify any fear of a recession. But I think that what you do as an individual, you look at your own spending, you look at your own life. Okay, are you working? Are you making enough? Are your expenses higher than they were? And my answer is yes across the board. My grocery bill, when I go shopping, I don't go often, but when I go, I buy the exact same items. My bill is up 60% from last year at the same time. Okay. So again, you want to tell me that we're not in a recession? I go, okay, fine. Tell me that, but show me the average American who's not in massive debt, who has no money for an emergency and is maxed out on credit cards, paying usury rates of interest to just to live and support their family.
Yeah. No, I mean, what does Jamie Dimon make? 200 million a year, something like that?
At least.
Yeah. I mean, bread could be $1,000 a loaf. He wouldn't feel it, right? And yet he tells the average American, no recession. The Fed's right. They've got inflation dialed in. Everything's going to get better. Invest, invest, invest.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do agree with the invest when you can afford to. I don't think the average American can afford to be investing unless they have a 401k, unless they have enough to at least have planned to put away money. But most Americans don't plan that far ahead, right? Most Americans don't have $400 for an emergency. And of course, one of the things I try to tell everybody is the first payment you should make every month is to yourself, and to put it away somewhere so that you build something for your retirement. But listen, they're going to continue to try to convince people, for whatever motives they have behind it, whether it be political or whatever, saying that the economy is in good shape. But as I said, look in the mirror, look at your own bank account, look at your own spending, look at what's going on, look at what you're paying for gas. And I can't find anything good out of those items.
Yeah. So in the past, you had said that based on what you were seeing, that you saw the market coming down. You were right. The average person lost over 20%. Do you now see things going back up as we're seeing now? Or is this a head fake driven by a handful of companies, and we should expect to see it go down over the next 12 months?
Well, again, I'm not going to say when, but I will say, I originally told you 50 to 70% is the haircut I expect to see. I am still under those same expectations. Okay, that has not changed. Now, again, I will always be invested personally. And right now I am long the markets because, again, you cannot fight what they call the price action or the tape, right? The markets are going up. But deep in my heart, I am telling you that I believe, and I'm would almost bet on it in a way. If I could bet on it, just over the next 5 years, I would be right. But obviously, you can't make that bet. I think we're going to see a dramatic, massive correction. You cannot continue to destroy American values and American ideals and their bank books by letting government overspend, by making taxes higher, and by doing everything else that is detrimental to the middle class. That is what the current administration has done, is they have destroyed the middle class from 61% to 42%. And we're seeing it's going to get worse. And the Federal Reserve is raising rates or hiking rates into a recessionary period, whether you want to officially call this a recession or not. So to me, these all add up to a dramatic beatdown, very similar to 1987 and very similar to 2001 and 2008. There's a lot of warning signs already starting to show. But again, that doesn't mean that the markets have to go down tomorrow. And I don't want anybody to get nervous and panic. Just be aware that it can happen. But the good news is that when it does happen, you'll have plenty of time to get involved to that side of the market too, if you don't ignore it like many are ignoring right now with the greed factor.
Yeah. Do you see Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve raising rates at their next meeting, or do you think they have this idea that inflation's under control and they can now hold us where we've been at?
I think they're hiking 100%. That my read is that they're going 100%. My read is they're going to continue to hike, and that the 10-year notes, which are the benchmark for mortgage and everything else, are getting to 6%. Okay. This is the way we price. And again, this is more of a way of taxation without representation. This is what they are creating. This is the entire structure. And the Federal Reserve are a bunch of morons. Okay. I mean, again, I know they're brilliant people from an education book standpoint, but they have no common sense and they have no understanding what it takes to live in the environment when your income is declining and your expenses are rising.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well put. I feel like Congress's motto is let the next Congress deal with the problem, right? Like we're here to now to work. Let the next Congress deal with this. But they've been kicking the can down the road for decades, and it's going to catch up with us eventually. Staying on the inflation topic, this morning, Yahoo Finance said inflation is falling at the fastest rate in decades. Do you think that they are referring to the future price increases slowing, or do you think we might actually see prices of everyday goods start to come back to where they were a year or two ago?
I think they're looking for Mr. Rourke and Tattoo in Fantasy Island with ridiculous comments that make no sense. Number one, when is the last time you went into like a Starbucks and you saw them lower the price of a cup of coffee? Okay. When did they ever lower prices in any retail environment other than on sale? Okay. The only prices that really circulate up and down are gasoline and items like that. But for the most part, we don't see dramatic drops in prices. They continue to either stay steady or they continue to hike them. The inflation. We're nowhere near the end of what's going on with inflation. It's only going to get worse. We've given up control to Saudi Arabia, to China, and to Russia. And when you give away your natural resources, and we have crude oil, which is a natural resource, which involves 80% of everything you do in life. Okay. And that Saudi Arabia, as I said in the past, was going to cut. They cut twice. And they're going to cut production once again because they are not going to stomach these prices at these lower levels. And once we will see a demand, but the crude oil itself tells you how weak the economy is because Saudi Arabia has cut production twice, yet oil prices are having trouble rising, which tells us that there's a big lack of demand going forward.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's insightful. Thank you. I don't know if you saw this or not because you were preparing for the show, but the CEO of Goldman Sachs announced that their profits plunged 58% in Q2 because of uncertainty in the markets and their inability to forecast correctly. Is this a signal to the rest of us that the stock market might become volatile, or is this just one company's struggles being played out in front of the world?
I think this is more of again, the big banks, Goldman Sachs being one of them, has always been very big into the trying to manipulate a moment of markets and deal in price. And I think this was just a statement from them to try to move the markets in a direction so that they could take the opposite side. As a floor trader, and I know that we run short on time, but I just want to tell this story. As a floor trader, the pit was so big that the Goldman Sachs had a buy broker and a sell broker. And many times they would send the smaller broker who had something to drive the market on one side of the pit to create a stir when the real order was on the other side of the pit that they were going to take advantage. So they were trying to force price one way so they could take advantage of it. And all the big banks did that back in those days. And I think they still do it today when they make these big statements. I think this is nothing more than a statement to make people think in a different manner for the moment.
Okay, so maybe they're not on down in the pit doing this, but now they're using like big media companies.
They're using Twitter, they're using regular media, they're using their news. Listen, we've all seen, Citibank, when oil was getting crushed a number of years ago, saying, well, oil is going down to 20. Well, that was because they wanted to buy oil. So it went down, they bought it. You get big calls on certain products. They're looking, in my opinion, they are looking to get to the other side of that market, and they want to take advantage because they know that the average person on the street is going to panic or going to act on information they think is inside information. And one thing we know for sure, by the time you and I hear it, figure we're the 1 or 2 millionth person to hear that information.
Yeah, the other day I was thinking that exact same thing because it was saying something like, Bridgewater just bought a bunch of, this stock, and they believe it has, so many percent upside, right? And then they drip this out on Yahoo and MarketBeat and Benzinga and all of those. But you're saying they're already in.
They've already made their decision. They're already part of it.
Their purchase.
It's called, there's a technical term, it's called front running. And I'm not saying that everybody does it, and I'm not accusing anybody, but it happens all the time. Just like when you used to watch that, whatever that website was that drove markets crazy, when GameStop and AMC, they were already in those markets. They are doing this intentionally because it's front running the market. It's illegal, but it's still done on a regular basis.
Yeah. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. So right now, and analysts are saying that there's over $10 trillion sitting in U.S. money market accounts. Do you think this is because the Federal Reserve has finally given us an interest rate that makes sense to stay in a money market account? Or is this just fear and uncertainty about going back into the markets?
I think that it's just a number. And again, obviously it's a big number, but big numbers everything's much bigger now. I mean, what did you make 30 years ago? What do you make today? Okay, equivalent. I've heard this for 44 years. I've been trading. I've heard there's three things that are consistent. When the grain markets are weak, China's buying grains. When the markets want investors, there's a lot of money on the sidelines. You know what? There's always money on the sidelines to buy. Okay, always and forever. There's always money, because money flows in every single day, which is why dull markets drift higher. This is nothing more than more rhetoric trying to keep this market rolling so that the big banks and the big sellers can get short this market at higher prices.
All right. So as you know from being a fan of my channel, I cover the Russia-Ukraine war a lot. It's very hard to decipher between what's truth, what's lie, what's war propaganda. But within the financial realm, they're putting out propaganda all the time to manipulate the American people, it sounds like.
Well, I mean, listen, what is war about? War is about profit. War is a profit center. You know, the original conflict might have started for a legitimate reason, which we don't know, but maybe it did. But wars do not last to this duration unless they're for profit, unless somebody is benefiting off of it. And certainly, U.S. companies are benefiting. The president is benefiting. Okay, everybody is benefiting by donating and giving all this dough to Ukraine for no reason. And of course, Russia is killing it, right? They're making a fortune. And you can listen to the garbage that they spew about the sanctions and all the other thing. Russia is making a fortune. Just look at what's going on there. Look at who their relations are with. This is all about money. It's about profit. It's about fleecing once again the American middle class, because we're the ones who are going to get to finance all this money they're giving away anyways.
Yeah. Senator Lindsey Graham said that the American people, I'm just paraphrasing, but basically that the American people should quit being so concerned about how the U.S. government is spending their taxpayer money over in Ukraine, because the majority of that is going to these American weapons companies that are making profits. So the money's just coming right back to American companies, right? Like, he says the quiet part out loud. We get it. You want to steal our money and give it to your donors so that you can get reelected. Meanwhile, there's no American boys and girls being killed in Ukraine, so you don't give a crap what happens to Russians and Ukrainians. All they want is that money for their donors.
Well, isn't that the way it goes? And that's why our whole political system, whether you be a Republican or a Democrat, okay, they're all busted because they don't do anything. You know, we have this whole fight consistently, and basically they're all stealing our money because they don't really care about this country, and they care about how they can get their votes. It's the same reason that Social Security is still in the 60s when it should be close to 80. Okay, there's no reason for Social Security to be in the mid 60s anymore. It doesn't work. The numbers, the Ponzi scheme doesn't work, but they don't care because the Federal Reserve will continue to add to the money supply to help these guys spend more of our money. And of course, yeah, we'll make more money, but my money that I make, and I make a lot more than I made in 1985, but I lived a hell of a lot better in 1985 than I live today.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's a testament to the inflation, compounded inflation, right? Yeah, Robert Kennedy Jr. said, we spent $9 trillion in the Middle East and got nothing for it but a big fat pile of debt. Okay, speaking of the US dollar, the BRICS nations announced that this coming August, they are getting ready to publicly announce their commodities-backed currency, right? Gold, oil, other commodities, and 40 other nations said, we love this idea. We love the idea of this. How does this affect the US dollar? Is it going to implode overnight, or is it more like, hey, this thing is now just going to have a competitor? It may be second place if our government continues to behave the way. Where do you see it going?
Well, I first of all, I do think that what the BRICS nations are doing is very solid, right? In fact, if you go into this country, Texas and Missouri are trying to pass bills to allow them to use gold as a currency. Okay. Listen, the US dollar isn't going away so fast, right? There's always been this fear, every time something goes wrong, everybody wants the US dollar is not going to be the reserve currency. Well, guess what? It's going to be, and it wouldn't take us much to take back full control and erase all this nonsense. But again, when you have a weak administration who gives away everything to everybody but its own people, there's the problem. Okay. But again, is this going to be working? Yeah, I think it'll work fine. I think that the gold-backed currency, I mean, we should be gold-backed. Alan Greenspan, who was the most famous Fed chair, the real bubble builder before Bretton Woods Act, said we should not go off the gold standard. We can't go off the gold standard. And of course, once he became the Fed chair, he said we need to be off the gold standard. Right. So again, that statement alone tells you how ridiculous and how fraudulent the fiat currency system is. So what the BRICS nations are doing is fine, but is it going to replace the United States? No. The US dollar will be the reserve currency for at least the rest of my lifetime. I don't know how long after that, but again, this will depend on who's in office and how much charge we take, because we become far too weak as a nation. Everybody tells me, well, it's the greatest country in the world. I said, yeah, it is the greatest country in the world, but the problem is we're going backwards. We should be forcing others to catch up to us as we get better and better, not we get worse and worse so that we get down to the crap of the world. And that's where we're headed. And that's very sad to me.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of fiat currencies and a basket of commodities, are you still long on gold? And do you see that playing a larger role on the global stage?
I love gold. I mean, listen, right now, full disclosure, I own a lot of physical. Okay. That I buy all the time. That has nothing to do with what I'm trading. Right now, from a trading standpoint, I'm short gold. But I do believe that it will make new highs this year. Okay. I'm long silver right now. And I believe that'll get into the 30s again this year. So again, my opinion is one thing, but the price action in gold is still pretty weak. Okay. It's been having trouble getting back up above 2,000. Now, is it going dramatically lower? I don't think so. I mean, I would suspect that in somewhere around 1,900 or 1,850 would be probably the lows here. But I'm still buying physical either way. Again, you remember, you have to separate what is my investment versus what am I trading. And when I'm investing, I don't really care what the value is, because I'm going to accumulate it and I'm never selling it, in the next, in the next month, 2 months, or 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first started telling my community to look into gold more, it was around 1,650 an ounce. So now being around, 1930, 1960, it looks pretty good. But I'm hearing a lot of people saying, hey, right now, there's a lot of people buying, but it's not really driving the price up because it's not moving fast enough. But almost everyone I talk to is saying they're long gold and they believe it will hit new highs within the next 12 to 18 months.
I concur.
Okay, great. Todd, thank you so much for coming on. If people want to learn about your Monday calls or get more information, where should they head?
They should head to bubbatrading.com, but better email me direct, because you'll get a link from me, bubba@bubbatrading.com. Would love to share with you. Really, it's just a big discussion, kind of like this, but I do a monologue, do it by myself, but I do talk about all markets and go through what's going on. And I'd love to have, all of your people there, because I love your audience and I love being involved in your show.
Great. Thank you again for coming on, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate it, brother.